This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all of the top news in the world of sports. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
We are back here on a Wednesday. This brand new shiny green clock I have not seen. They're in both studios. We have two studios here, and they're in both studios. And I was kind of thrown for a loop when I came in this morning because all the lights are off, except for this bright green digital clock, and I'm thinking is this where the Green Lantern has his secret hideaway and he didn't get out in time? Because I was so confused as far as what was happening. But anyways, it's kind of nice. It's currently 7:11 out here on the West Coast. And we are back here recording another episode here on a Wednesday, coming off of a night talking a lot of basketball. We'll talk about some college and some NBA. We'll lead off with the college basketball. Really, it was upset night last night. You see a lot of the times in college football, you have upset week where a lot of the top teams drop. Well, last night was kind of the same thing. It was upset night, I guess you could say, in college basketball. Number 1 Villanova, number 2 Kansas, and number 4 Kentucky all lose games last night, all of which were on the road. So, I mean, that definitely has something to do with it. But Marquette beats Villanova 74-72. Number 18 West Virginia really dismantles Kansas 85-69, and unranked Tennessee defeats Kentucky 82-80. So quite a little bit of an upset there. Number 3 is Gonzaga, and they are the only undefeated team. So I'd imagine a week from now, if they're still unbeaten, they'd probably jump up to number 1. Have to wait and see. But anyways, in the big news in college basketball, the NCAA is deciding to do something that reminds me kind of like what they're doing with college football. So they're going to be doing a first ever in-season look at the NCAA tournament bracket. So on Saturday, February 11th, the NCAA is going to have kind of a pre-March Madness selection show. An updated look at the top 4 seeds in every bracket. So technically the top 16 teams, where they're currently ranked, who at this season would be ranked number 1, 2, 3, and 4 in each bracket if the season were to end right now. So I guess that's an okay thing. Kind of something they've never done before. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, so they're doing basically what college football does, where they basically take the best, it would be 16 teams or whatever, and tell you who the top 4 teams are in each conference, or at least each region, I guess. And I like it at least in the sense because you at least have some sort of an idea. I mean, you generally understand who the top 4 teams are going to be because you basically have people telling you that the week before that, you have the bracketology and everything else like that. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Kentucky or Kansas or Duke or whoever it is. Like, oh, yeah, they're going to be a 1 seed. Like, maybe they drop to a 2 seed. But you at least have an idea who the best teams in college basketball are, because there are some people who don't really pay attention to college basketball until, basically March. That's when they basically start to care about it and they start to see what Arizona or Gonzaga or whatever else Villanova is going to be doing. So at least right now you're like, oh, okay, cool. So we have this team, because basically people aren't going to basically go and see how the teams are doing. Like, we want to have something to where it's just in bite-sized forms, right? And if we basically have something that says, okay, these are the top 4 seeds here, top 4 seeds here, top 4 seeds here, top 4 seeds here, then all of a sudden we're like, oh, okay, cool. So that team's pretty good. And you at least have some sort of an idea beforehand that we kind of get prepared and be like, oh, okay, cool. So I didn't know that about Wichita State, or I didn't know that about, Syracuse or whatever, right? Like, you could have some sort of an idea beforehand, and I think that's pretty good, at least for casual people that don't necessarily, like I said, pay attention to it before March.
So Mark Hollis, he's the director of athletics at Michigan State, and he's also the chair of this year's committee. He went on to say that we are excited about giving the fans a glimpse of what the men's basketball committee is thinking at this point of the season, and creating a buzz as we look towards Selection Sunday, which is obviously in March.
Right.
So I'm with you. I think it's a good idea. It gives you a little bit of a look inside, because a lot of times we're kind of left until Selection Sunday, until after all these conference tournaments are done and over with, to say, should Gonzaga, who might have had 1 or 2 losses but not played really a whole lot of people, should they be a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed? Should this team, who has been good all year but lost early in their conference title, should they drop from a 2 seed to a 3 seed? So it gives us a little bit of an insight, so I think that's great. For me, I'd love to see this the other way around, though, because the top 4 seeds in each bracket are all good teams. You're looking at that as the top 16 teams in the country.
Right.
Every one of those teams is going to be capable of going all the way and winning the championship.
Mm-hmm.
It's a one-game, single-elimination tournament. We all know how exciting it is. To me, it's the most exciting thing in sports because you literally cannot predict it. Last year, I had Michigan State winning it all. They were a number 2 seed. They lost in the first round.
Yeah, a lot of people, yeah.
So I think that's what makes it so exciting. And for me, it's the most exciting thing in sports because of the uncertainty. You have these mid-major Cinderella teams making deep runs. I think of like VCU
George
as an
Mason.
11 seed. George Mason.
Right.
Butler was in the national title game back-to-back years as an 8 and 9 seed.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes a whole lot of excitement, a whole lot of uncertainty. But for me, I like to see it the other way around. I know who the top 16 teams are, regardless of where they're seated, and they're going to be competing. I'd like to know, as it stands right now, who are the last maybe 4 in? Who are the last 4 out? Like, I'm just going to throw out a random team. I'm just going to throw out, like, SMU or whatever.
Right.
Like, SMU is barely on the bubble or something. Oh, they're currently in right now. They have a tough game, like 6-game stretch coming up. If they could win like 4 out of their last 6, then we'd probably put them in. That way, these teams who are maybe uncertain about where they stand have a better idea as it looks come March. I'd much rather see that because I know that Kentucky's going to be a number 2 or 3 seed even though they lost last night. I know Kansas is probably going to be a number 1 seed. I know that Baylor's a good team. I know Gonzaga's a good team. I don't need to know where they'd be ranked in February. I want to know where these teams are that may be on the outside looking in, what they have to do to get their way in.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, we always know, okay, Duke, well, maybe not Duke this year, but we always know, like, Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, Arizona, kind of like the national powers that you've heard about for a very long time. Yeah, they're going to be in there. They're going to do stuff like that. But like you said, if it's just like, oh, okay, this team, so what is this team? And then maybe, like, it's not going to necessarily do it, but at least it gives you the opportunity to be like, oh, okay, cool. So what's, like you said, like Georgia Tech or something like that. Like, you know, some random school like that, and it's just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I wonder who's on the team. And one thing I've realized this year is, you know, because you talk about something like the NBA draft, and you basically have a bunch of people all spread out, right? It's not just like Kansas and Kentucky dominating these things like that, right? It's not basically 2 or 3 schools that are like so dominant. You have basically, you know, Lonzo Ball at UCLA, you have Markelle Fultz at Washington, you got NC State, you got, you know, Kansas, Kentucky, Florida State. Like, you have all these talented people spread out through all these schools. So now you're going to have a chance to see, like I said, something like a Florida State, which isn't necessarily a national power as far as basketball goes. You have a chance to kind of get a good look at them maybe a couple weeks beforehand. Like, not a big thing of like you're going to pay attention to them now, but at least you have something a couple weeks beforehand, so that way you can at least have somewhat of an idea if you want to do that before the tournament actually starts.
It's a good idea. It gets you talking about college basketball, which for me,
right.
I feel like college basketball before maybe mid-February, early March is really untalked about. I can't really remember a time that we've talked about it here on the show with the exception of maybe the Ball brothers.
Right.
Because I feel like, well, and Grayson Allen, but I feel like college basketball, because of the one-and-done rule, is kind of losing its limelight. Because literally, you have a whole new roster every single year. In college football, you have to be there at least 3 years. So you have a guy like Lamar Jackson at Louisville, the Heisman Trophy winner. He'll be going back to school next year. We had Deshaun Watson last year going into this year. In college basketball, you don't really have that every year because you have new players every year because your whole roster has changed because guys are going to college for 1 year and then bolting to the NBA.
Right.
So I guess it's okay in that regard. You don't have these big standout college basketball stars. Like, who's the biggest star? Probably Lonzo Ball, and he's just a freshman. He's still playing not even like 20 games this season. So I guess it gives us some good talking points, but I'd much rather see who's on the outside looking in because it gives me a better idea, and it gives those schools a better idea of what they need to do. We know who whether or not they're ranked number 5 or number 3 or number 4. We know who some of the top 16 teams are. I don't need to know where they're getting ranked.
Right.
I'd much rather see where some of the outside teams looking in are getting ranked. So we'll take our first break of the show. After the break, we're going to stick with basketball, but we're going to transition over to the NBA. LeBron James not very happy with Cavs management and the whole mindset there, looking for a backup point guard. We have some options, some people that he may be looking at, as well as the surprise team of the season in my eyes, not having a great season record-wise, but compared to their last couple seasons, exceeding expectations. The Philadelphia 76ers, another win last night over the Clippers. We'll talk about that and more right after the break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back. So we're going to begin with something just really quick. So it looks like Usain Bolt, the guy who basically has dominated the Olympics for the last, 2 or 3 times. Basically, so he has 9 gold medals, right? So he had 3 in the 100 meter, 3 in the 200 meter, and then he has another one where it's a team relay, right? So it turns out that not Bolt himself, but one of his teammates, Nesta Carter, he basically tested positive for a banned substance. So instead of the 9 gold medals that he had, it goes back to 8. And it was one of those things when I saw it on TV, I was like, Usain Bolt, and all I saw was like lose his gold medal, and I'm like, oh. Because Usain Bolt was like one of those people that like you wanted to watch, basically like Michael Phelps. Like those are the reasons why you tuned in to the Olympics, to see if he could basically do something that's never been done before, where he got, 3 times back to back to back, 100 meter and 200 meter. But at least the thing with Usain Bolt is it's not him, right? He's not the one that tested positive for anything. It was a teammate of his, which still stinks because his, thing goes from 9 to 8 gold medals because you have to give it back because, when your teammate tests positive, you win. It's not an equal playing field, blah, blah, blah. But, it's not even kind of a big deal. Now, if it comes back later that, like, say another teammate or 3 of the 4 tested positive, it's not Usain Bolt, it's like, okay, well, now maybe that looks a little bit different. But if it's just like one of your teammates that kind of decides to go on the juicy juice, it stinks because Bolt goes from 9 to 8, but it's nothing that, like, now we're going to look at you differently because you're the one that tested positive for these things.
Yeah, for me, this is, like, big deal.
Right.
It's going to suck for him. He's going to say, I'm a 9-time gold medalist. Now I'm going to say I'm an 8-time gold medalist. You mentioned, like, the triple thing, 3 100-meter golds, 3 200-meter golds, and then 3 relay golds. Now it goes down to 2 from the 08 Olympics. Not going to be there. So, for me, this is, like, big deal. It's not going to do anything to his legacy. All it's going to do is just take away stats from him. But
I mean, honestly, like, if I was him, I would just basically pull the, like, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart thing. It's like, man, I got these. Like, yeah, you want to take something away, that's fine. No, I still won these things. You still saw me win these things. I'm going to say I have 9. Like, you say USC, like, yeah, I still got that championship. You can't take that away from me.
Yeah, for me, it's, like, big deal. But anyways, moving over to basketball now. Some games within the NBA last night. The Spurs defeated the Raptors 108-106. I really don't think it matters who they have playing for them. They could have me and you on the roster starting, but yet they'd somehow find a way to win. The Raptors kind of struggling now, only 3 games back of the struggling Cavaliers as well. The big surprise, though, the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah.
They come from 19 points down over the Clippers with Blake Griffin coming back into the lineup last night without Joel Embiid, who is by far their best player right now.
Right.
And they win 121-110. The Philadelphia 76ers are 16-27. So you're like, it's not really a good record. They have a winning percentage of 37.2. The Sixers won 10 games all of last year.
Yeah,
They already 1.5 times more wins before the All-Star break than they had all of last year.
I think I saw this thing where I think you take Brett Brown's 3 years that he's been in Philadelphia, and by no means this is his fault, because Sam Hinkie and all them basically said, like, yeah, we're going to lose, and it's going to be really bad for a while. But I think he has something like, before this season, 47 wins in 3 years. And then you think about the thing of, like, you talked about the Spurs, and anybody can win there. You can put you and I there. They basically averaged at least 50 wins when Tim Duncan was there from, like, 1999, 1998 on. And, yeah, with the Philadelphia 76ers, they're basically, I think they have just confidence now, right? Is it one of those things? Because, like, I mean, Joel Embiid is obviously super talented. He's also 22 years old. But he's someone that, with the NBA, like, obviously you only need that one dude. LeBron James pretty much established the fact that, like, if you have that one talented player, whether it's Miami or Cleveland, you can, start winning with one guy. And maybe Joel Embiid isn't that guy, but, I mean, he's the only difference with, like, you had Noel before. Who else is on that team? Like, Stauskas? No.
Yeah, Jabari Parker's even out, too. He had a really good rookie season last year.
Yeah.
The only real addition is Joel Embiid. He's having definitely a lot of fun. He's had a lot of fun on social media, a lot of stuff with the Kardashians. And they're without the number 1 overall pick, Ben Simmons, who is due back pretty soon. So he's another piece you can kind of add to this puzzle in Philadelphia.
And you talk about them being a bad team, 16-27, so they're going to get another draft pick. But the thing is, you actually have, like, confidence in the team now, right? Because the thing with Joel Embiid was, he was not injury prone, but, like, he just kept having these freak injuries or whatever that would keep him out. And, yeah, he missed a couple of games here or there, but a lot of the times he missed the season was just rest, because it's one of those things of, like, we understand how super talented you are, and you just watch the dude play. Like, he runs really easily. Like, it's one of those things I heard Bill Simmons talk about in the past. Like, you can see dudes when they run, like, some dudes look like kind of like laboring or whatever, and it's like, oh, he doesn't look like he will do this very long. Embiid looks, Akimish. Like, he looks like it's just the easiest thing in the world for him, because he played soccer in Cameroon and all these other things, so he has, like, other sports, tendencies with these things. But, I mean, the dude's basically averaging 20 and 8 this year with 2.5 blocks. And the 2.5 blocks, like I said, 22 years old. I mean, the guy is, like, I don't want to say the reason why they basically flipped the switch this year, but, you take him, like you said, Ben Simmons is going to come back either late this year or early next year, because maybe they just do the thing where it's just like, yeah, just forget it. Ben Simmons, just take a year off. It's fine, because that's what they did with Joel. And then you bring in another top, call it 10 pick next year. Like, in this team in a couple of years, like maybe not next year, but I'll call it like 2 or 3 years from now, they could absolutely, especially in the East, be a playoff team, and then all of a sudden you start challenging once LeBron kind of goes down a little bit, because by that time LeBron will be about 35, 36. He's not going to be the same dude, because he has to finally hit a wall at some point.
Father Time's unbeaten.
I mean, he eventually has, like, Kobe Bryant was Kobe Bryant until he tore his Achilles. Then that was it. He wasn't the same dude anymore, and eventually you just kind of go off that hill. I mean, even something like Dirk Nowitzki, like, he was kind of solid. He think he's going to do this till he's 45, and even this year he's starting to show signs of, being an older player. So eventually it's not going to be the Cavaliers / Heat in the finals every single year. And I can see a team like Philadelphia, like I said, maybe not next year, but like 2, 3, 4 years from now, starting to creep up there, along with the Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, eventually they're going to start competing for these things. And I mean, Joel Embiid is one of my favorite people to watch in the NBA right now.
The Sixers are definitely very entertaining. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. Some of them are even without Joel Embiid, who is their best player right now. I'd say if they're going to have one problem going forward, I guess it might even be a good problem, but they're going to have too many big men.
Right.
You have Embiid, you have Noel, you have Jahlil Okafor.
Yeah.
I guess you can consider Ben Simmons a big man at about 6'9". So
sure,
they're probably going to have to do something with at least one of these guys to get smaller, get some guard play.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're definitely one of the more entertaining teams, and they've been really the shock of the season to me. I mean, they already have 16 wins. They had 10 the whole entire year last year, and they really brought in one guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
almost like
and then even bring him in.
Effect.
Yeah, and then even bring him in. He was there. It's just all of a sudden he gets to play right now because the guy you quote unquote brought in. Actually, I guess you could say Sarge. Sarge, I guess, is new because he came over from Europe. But yeah, like the team is basically the same outside of a couple people. And like I said, they're not good, but they're at least really fun to watch. With Joel Embiid and even Sarge had this block a couple of days ago. Like he had these 2 blocks back to back. So like they're a super entertaining team, and they look like they're having a lot of fun. So, you'd assume in a couple of years they're going to be really good. And basically now they're going to play the Milwaukee Bucks. Is that what, tomorrow?
This is tonight.
That's
another winnable game. Milwaukee not a bad team at 21-23. Obviously the Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Right.
But that's another winnable game Embiid may or may not be back. He has like a bruised knee right now,
Yeah.
so they're probably going to be pretty cautious with him. But it's another winnable game on the road in Milwaukee. Really quickly before the break, we'll talk about LeBron James and the Cavs. So he's definitely not very happy after they lost to the Pelicans on Monday. Had some post-game remarks talking about how we need to get better. We need a bleeping playmaker, needs a backup point guard. The team is really top-heavy. And what he's saying is correct, but a lot of times these super teams, even the Warriors are top-heavy right now. But they're doing things because Steph Curry's on $11 million a year. LeBron James is on $33 million a year. So for me, LeBron, if you really care about winning so much, then maybe you shouldn't take a $33 million a year salary because you're already making millions of dollars in your shoes and Nike and Sprite and whatever else you have going on because you're LeBron James. So for me, if you wanted to really care about the team and make a statement and try to build for a championship, then maybe you should have taken a pay cut to give some of these other guys more money and to sign more players. But anyways, reports are the Cavaliers are interested in a few guys. One of them being Rajon Rondo, Jameer Nelson, and maybe Darren Williams, who plays with the Mavericks. You're looking at a backup point guard, a distributor, a playmaker. Obviously, you're not going to be able to go out there and get like someone like Chris Paul or an elite guy. So you kind of have to just work with what you have. Of those three guys, who do you think would be the best option?
I mean, I guess Darren.
I saw your face. That kind of said it all. It's
Well,
like you're not really sold on any of them.
Look, here's the thing. We here live in Sacramento. We had Rajon Rondo for a year. Man is talented. Man will get you a lot of assists. I understand he has a championship from Boston in 2008. All those things are nice. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want Rondo. Rondo's kind of an insane person. You don't want that.
Great. He's a great player, but probably one of the worst teammates of any in sports.
He's not even a bad teammate necessarily in the sense of like he's gonna like get like all these problems like on and off the court. He's just mopey and weird and like kind of lonerish. Like he's just kind of a weird dude like that. But like I said, super talented. But you know, I don't think they want to kind of blend that in with everything with the Cavs. Then you get someone like, you know, I guess Darren Williams would be the best person for that because he's at least was a talented point guard at one time. Now he's kind of a off the bench kind of guy, and he still has these, you know, things in his game where you still can see like, oh, okay, cool, there's the old Darren Williams, but it's not going to last for any prolonged period of time. And you said they're not going to be able to get a Chris Paul or someone like that. Look, I'm not 100% sure because you want to talk about like a backup point guard, like, okay, but you can do someone if you're a backup point guard that can do point guardy things. Dude, I'm not ruling it out that Dwayne Wade doesn't go there.
Well, he's definitely unhappy in Chicago.
That's what I'm saying. And like him and LeBron obviously are boys. Like you just look at the time when they're in Miami, they're legitimately best friends. Like you talk about Chris Paul, Melo, Wade and James. Like those four guys are legitimately good friends, and Wade and LeBron are the best of the friends between those four. And you know, Dwayne Wade already basically said like, "Hey, I'm not that happy in Chicago. Like, you know, if Jimmy Butler's not here, I'm not staying here with a bunch of young guys." When you look at the people in Cleveland, I mean, yeah, Kyrie Irving's young, but you have Kevin Love who's been in the league for a decent amount of time. LeBron James is 32 or something like that right now. You got
32, yeah.
Kyle Korver is over there right now, like, you know, J.R. Smith. You have people who are veterans in this league. And, yeah, Dwayne Wade's contract is a little, you know, inflated like that, but I can see if they wanted to make that happen, have that happen, you know. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens because you got the thing with LeBron where he's basically trying to get management to do these things for him, to get these players for him, which, like, you want to talk about, oh, you signed a $33 million contract, you know, you should give him this money back. I mean, okay, but I'm never going to, like, tell someone what to do with their money necessarily like that, and he's not going to want, like, it's a weird thing because he said he wants playmakers, right? Which, if you're Kyrie or if you're Kevin Love, you're like, hi, cool, still here. I don't know what you mean by that. Like, I don't know what you mean by a playmaker. Like, we're kind of those as well, even though Kevin Love doesn't necessarily do the playmaking things in there like he did in Minnesota. But you know, you talked about how good the Warriors are because the Warriors basically added Kevin Durant, and they're outside of the loss to Miami a couple nights ago. They're still looking like the best team in the NBA outside of a couple of hiccups. You know, he basically is worried that LeBron is, I should say, that Golden State, once June hits, they're all going to be kind of flowing because right now they could be struggling with a game or two, but he's just assuming that once June happens, they're going to be at full strength, everything's going to be good, everything's going to be clicking, and they're going to be like they are now, where they're kind of struggling. So he basically wants to add one more person, one more piece, to where he's just like, okay, cool, this is my team, cool, we're good, everything's great. And now it's basically just the, Goliath versus Goliath thing in June when they face him in the finals.
I don't know who they could technically add. We mentioned some names, but none of them really make sense to me. But they need to do something. They literally don't have a backup point guard. LeBron is playing more minutes than anyone in the league at 32 years old. That does not bode well come playoff time. And really, for them, the playoffs start when? Maybe the Eastern Conference Finals? Maybe Boston? Maybe Toronto? Really?
Well, in the East,
comes out of that is
in the East, no. In the East,
give
no
them
one.
a run?
Yeah, in the East, no one cares. In the West, you got at least the chance of the Spurs or even the Rockets kind of getting hot and doing these things. But yeah, the Eastern Conference, it's maybe the finals at the best. But yeah, no. And this thing, all they don't necessarily need someone who's like an all-star. They just need someone who can bring the ball up the court and do point guardy things off the bench, because outside of that, you have people, JR and Korver at the shooting guards. You got Kyrie, you got Kevin Love, you got Channing Frye, shooting threes. You got all these different people on the team that can do these things for the Cavs. It's just you basically need like one guy coming off the bench who can do point guard things.
I mean, and they're kind of like hitting the panic button right now on LeBron is
to
try and maybe make a statement, but this team is still 30-13.
Right.
And they've gone 5-6 in their last 11 games.
Yeah, but didn't they go 30-11 last year and fire Blatt? Like, he's not opposed to necessarily basically just like going like, all right, this isn't working, I don't want to do this, and like change it kind of thing.
I get it, but I mean, it's almost like they're hitting the panic button a little too early for me. And like, I mean, you're still going to be the top team in the East. You don't have J.R. Smith right now, which isn't a really big loss, but I mean, it's a loss. It definitely hurts your team. But I think you need to do something because you're playing LeBron way too much.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
And that, to me, that's the biggest problem because Kyrie Irving's not a point guard. He's a 6'3" scorer. We all know that.
Yeah.
Kevin Love's basically Chris Bosh 2.0 now and just kind of lurks around the three-point line. So we know what his role is. Tristan Thompson is the guy who's going to bang down low. So, I mean, for me, it's just a need to find someone off the bench who could probably do something. I'm not really sure what's out there. Not really sure what they want to do as far as money is concerned. But, I mean, it's definitely not like they're like a fish out of water and they are hit the panic button and everything's going haywire. They're still going to be the top team in the East. And if there's ever a time to turn it around, they're playing the Kings tonight at home.
Yeah, that'll help.
I mean, that should help.
You talk about LeBron James in minutes. He's 37.5 minutes, which is tops in the NBA.
Right.
And like I said, the second is Kyle Lowry, who's not exactly a young player either, but then Zach LaVine, Andrew Wiggins, Jimmy Butler, James Harden, John Wall, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, Harrison Barnes. All those are pretty young dudes that are in the NBA. LeBron James, like you said, 32 years old. Like, he probably should rein it in, considering this is his, 13th, 14th year in the league?
He's 32, but in NBA years, he's a lot older.
Yeah.
All those playoff games,
all
the games in the
playoffs,
Olympics, he might be a 14-year veteran, but you can basically tack on another 2, maybe even 3 years, depending on how many playoff games and Olympic games and all that stuff he's played. So,
yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, he's a lot older than his 32-year-old frame, and he's not going to keep it up very long. Michael Jordan won his last championship at 35 years old. Kobe Bryant at 31. Magic Johnson at 28. Larry Bird at 29. LeBron's 32. So that doesn't really bode well for him, but he's got some pieces around him. I think they just need to add one more, and they'll be okay. We'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk about the Australian Open. We are in the semifinals of the men's and women's brackets. And then if we have time, we will talk about the San Francisco 49ers freezing ticket prices for the upcoming 2 seasons. Right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We are in the semifinals down under in Australia in the men's and women's brackets. So for the men's side, there's going to be some familiar faces. It's been kind of a wacky tournament. We had Andy Murray lose in the 4th round. Novak Djokovic lost early. So in the semifinals on the top half of the bracket, Roger Federer will be taking on Stan Wawrinka. It's a matchup of the two Switzerland men, so one of them will advance into the finals. And then on the other side, Rafa Nadal upset Milos Raonic this morning, or I guess you could say last night. But depending on the time, Australia is really, really far away, so the time is all messed up there. Mm-hmm. So Rafael Nadal upsets Milos Raonic in straight sets to advance to the semifinals against Grigor Dimitrov from Bulgaria. He's the number 15 seed. So am I the only one that wants Federer versus Nadal again?
Oh, no, I want that 100%.
Because I want that 100%, and I hope Federer wins.
No, I am absolutely... Like on both ends, men's and women's side. Like I want the kind of people that you know. Like nothing to get. Like Wawrinka, I actually know too. Like he's not anybody who's a slouch either. He has championships to himself as well. But yeah, I just want one more time Federer and Nadal, because it's the thing. It's not like they're 1 and 2 again. They're 17 and 9 as far as their rankings in this whole thing. And you know, Nadal has basically been the one guy that's been the thorn in Federer. Like Federer obviously has the most championships of all time for men's tennis, but Nadal's been that one guy that's like, no, I'm going to beat you.
Especially on clay in the French Open.
Yeah,
this is a hard court surface, but especially on the clay, Nadal's always had the edge.
And like, I just want to see just one more time this thing, like with things like this, like, you know, it's different with college basketball or college football, right? Because you say like, oh, I want to see the traditional powers of college football like USC or Alabama or something like that, or UCLA in basketball, something like that, right? But those are different people. Like with this, Nadal Federer, I want to see. I want to see just one more time Tiger Woods win a major. Like I just care about one more. Like I don't care about 2, 3 and beating Jack. Like that's fine. Like I just want to see like one more time, because the last one you saw him win was one of the best golf, you know, rounds I've ever seen in my life. The last one against Rocco Mediate in like 2008 or something like that, which is almost 10 years ago.
We'll see Tiger back in action tomorrow. Actually, his first tournament since last year. I think it's the Farmers Insurance Open tomorrow. But speaking of Tiger, he switched over to TaylorMade since his deal with Nike is no longer going on. So that sort of broke this morning. But I honestly don't think Tiger's ever going to win again.
He's probably not, but it's around the same lines. Like I want to see.
I get what you're saying, that like one more last like rah like one before you go out, like Ray Lewis or something.
Yeah. Do something like that, and then like even on the other side, on the women's side, like I want to see Venus and Serena, and that's no knock to Vandeweghe, the person that Venus is going to face. That's no knock to Lukic Baroni, who's going to be going against Serena. Like, you know, I guess you kind of want to see other people win, because then all of a sudden you can talk about, oh, maybe they're going to win a bunch of majors as well. But Serena's basically the best female tennis player, maybe even tennis player I've ever seen in my life. And to see the Williams sisters play one more time in the finals would be kind of fun, because they've done that enough times. You know, to see that one more time would be kind of cool. Like, I understand they don't like that, because it's one of those things of just like, you'd rather beat somebody that's not a sibling of yours. You've done it enough times, and like I've heard them say before, like they don't necessarily like doing it, and I get it. But just for like one more time, just to see the two of them, see a Venus like how old is Venus? Venus, like I saw some stat of like she's like the oldest person to reach the semifinals, but Venus has been doing it. You know, they've both been doing it a really long time, and Venus 36, yeah. So she's, you know. I mean, you would assume not much longer be able to do this, but you wouldn't assume she'd be able to go to 36. And yeah, I just want to see this one more time. I want to see the Williams sisters, and I want to see Nadal and Federer, since, you know, like I said, Andy Murray, Djokovic, none of them are in there right now.
It's possible. As you mentioned, Venus Williams, she is the number 13 seed. She'll be taking on fellow American Coco Vandeweghe. She's the daughter of former NBA player, a long time with the Nuggets, Kiki Vandeweghe. And then on the other side of the bracket, number 2, Serena Williams will be taking on Mirjana Lukic Baroni of Croatia. So Lukic Baroni and Vandeweghe are both unseeded.
Right.
So the Williams sisters in both their games will be the favorite. And of the 11 previous times that both of them have been in the semifinals of a Grand Slam, one of them's gone on to win. Yeah. So history looks pretty good for them as far as if it's going to be an all-Williams sister final. Of course, one of them's going to win. But we're not really sure. We do have the semifinals upcoming. We'll know by the end of the weekend is when the tournament is scheduled to end. So we'll know. Obviously, we'll update you back on Monday. But it's definitely a really good story. 3 out of 4 on the women's side are from the United States. It's great for the United States here where we're recording the show. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, really. But I think it's going to be Serena. I mean, Angelique Kerber, who was the number 1 seed, did lose to Vandeweghe.
Right.
And then she upset number 7 Garbine Muguruza as well in the quarters. So it was really Serena's the whole entire time. She's looked dominant. She's been winning in straight sets every single time. So I mean, it's hers to lose. I don't see how she does it. She's just too good, man.
She's
simply put, like, she's just too good.
Yeah, and then she had that like dry spell or whatever you want to call it, about 10, 12 years ago, where it was just like you assume like, oh, okay, she's kind of done, and then for the last like 8 years or so,
she took like a hiatus. Both of them did, and then she comes back and is like, oh, well, right where you left off. Like,
yeah,
nothing was left behind. So staying in the sports show, we're going to end it really quickly, but we'll talk about the 49ers. They're freezing their season ticket prices for the next upcoming 2 seasons. It's a good move. The season tickets are already kind of expensive, and quite frankly, no one wants to go to that stadium.
That's the other
Levi
thing.
Stadium.
Yeah.
Nobody goes there. There's more away fans than Niner fans, I think, at every game.
Yeah.
I remember they played a game against Dallas earlier this season, and like I don't know exactly when, but it was like week 3 or 4.
Right.
It was maybe like late September, early October. So the weather's still nice in the Bay Area at the time. And you could have sworn you were at a game at AT&T Stadium because they were louder. It was like you're looking and seeing all this white and blue everywhere. It was like it was a home game for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in California. I realize the Cowboys the most popular team in the league and everything, but
Right.
still, it was like you were in Texas.
Yeah, no, it's a weird thing because like even something like the Cowboys, right? Like the Cowboys up until this year were either a bad team because last year they were 4-12, or kind of like an average 8-8-ish kind of team, right? But it's the Cowboys and they always kind of draw people. One of the most historic franchises, if not the most historic franchise in the NFL. But the Niners are pretty historic too. I mean, they got 5 Super Bowls, 4 with Montana, 1 with Young. They're kind of one of the top franchises in all of the NFL. The Cowboys, when they were average to bad, they moved into the new Jerry World Stadium. Still draw, still get a bunch of people. The place, I've never been there, but from everything I've heard from everybody, the thing looks amazing, fantastic. The Niners, okay, cool, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get a new stadium. It's going to be nice. And it is. It is really, really nice as far as the stadium goes. But you had, Candlestick and everything that happened there, all the history that happened there. And they're like, okay, cool, we're going to go to this new place. You also have a team that's really bad now, which probably doesn't help the attendance.
That's the biggest problem for me.
Yeah.
If the team was good, they'd be selling out every single game like they were 4 or 5 years ago. And everyone here in Sacramento is talking about the brand new Golden One Center we have.
Right.
I've been there. It looks really nice. Everything's like so technologically driven.
Yeah.
Everything's up to date, state of the art. It looks really nice. But for me, once you go there 1 or 2 times, if the product on the court, or in this instance the field, the baseball diamond, whatever sport you're looking at,
Right.
if the product simply is not good, people are not going to come.
Yeah.
You could say, oh, fair weather fans, and you're not a true diehard fan, and whatever you want to say, and I guess there's some truth to that and everything. But simply put, if the product on the field is not good,
Right.
why do I want to go to the game?
Well, yeah, that's the thing of just like TV's kind of cannibalizing sports in that way because, yeah, you can say, oh, you're not a true fan. I mean, I can still watch the game. I just have to spend like $100 on the game. Like,
I can sit on my couch.
Yeah.
There's no lines in the food line. There's no lines to go to the bathroom.
I can have pizza delivered to me instead of waiting, in line for pizza or hot dogs or whatever you want. Yeah,
Everything's given to me. It's like, why do I need to go to that and watch that? In the Niners instance, they won 2 games this year, and they beat one team, the Rams, both times.
Yeah.
So it's like, why do I want to go there and know see what I expect to happen, and pay a whole lot of money? Because the Niners are one of the more expensive season tickets in the league.
Yeah.
They're not the highest, but they're one of the more expensive ones. It's the Bay Area. People have a lot of money there. It's a brand new stadium. So, I mean, it makes sense, but still, it's not a good situation right now. So
Yeah.
for them, the free season ticket prices, I guess, is a good idea.
Oh, it makes total sense. Yeah.
They have to do what they can to try and get fans in there.
Yeah, because you talked about, you can say, oh, well, the NFL is only 8 games a year. You can't make it to 8 games. Well, I don't want to make it to 8 games when I see my team's face get caved in every single time. Like, outside of the Rams, name me, a team that you thought they would actually have any chance against, right? Like, the whole season, it was just like, oh, okay, cool, we got Blaine Gabbert. He stinks. Oh, okay, now we're going to go to Colin Kaepernick. He stinks. He's actually been okay this year, but still, as far as a team, everybody that you knew was gone. Aldon Smith, Justin Smith, Frank Gore, Patrick Willis, every single person that you could have named on that team is gone, right? Even Bowman stayed, but he got hurt, so he's out. Kaepernick's the only one that you actually have heard of before on the team that's been there for a minute, and no one really wanted to see, him play because you basically knew the whole team around him was garbage. So You're going to go see a team that you love get their face caved in every week. That doesn't sound like fun. You want to at least have the allure of like, oh, maybe they win. Like everything you want to talk about, some of these teams, like you at least had hope for like the Jaguars this year, and at least the Browns. You didn't think the Browns were going to be like a playoff team, but if you'd have said they were going to go 1-15, that would have surprised you. You would have thought they would at least be somewhat decent because, you know, at least the NFL, it's like, oh, yeah, maybe they do well. You knew the Niners were going to be trash this year. You knew they were going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they basically did nothing to disprove that the whole year.
Absolutely, but I guess freezing prices is a good idea.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You have to try and do whatever you can. I know that the Atlanta Falcons in their new stadium are offering like really, really cheap food pricing, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
The Milwaukee Bucks did a promotion where they guaranteed you'd see 10 games. So if a team had lost, you get like a 10-game package. But if the team loses one of those games, it doesn't count against you, so you're guaranteed to see 10 home wins.
Right.
Because their home attendance is not really good in Milwaukee. So everyone is trying to do something a little different. With the NFL, it's only 8 games. You can't really do too much stuff like what Milwaukee's doing, but you have to try and do something, and I guess it's a step in the right direction is the best sort of way I can put it. So with that, we'll end the show. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
We are signing off here with the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. I'd like to thank you for listening. Anthony, you'll be back in the studio tomorrow talking all things sports, and we will see you next time, guys. Have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.